cover the packages and isolated environments in this part. So we will see how to install packages, how to work with isolated environments, and check for pre-installed packages in your center. Yes, I mean the HPC center. So the packages and environments work in a similar manner than in Python and in Julia. The packages can expand considerably your program, right? So I mentioned previously that Julia was created with the idea of modularity, which means that if someone else write a module or a package, or maybe you in the past you wrote some module for Julia, then you can incorporate that module into your Julia code to expand its features, right? And the isolated environments work also in a similar manner than in Python, where you create an environment and then inside that environment you can install specific versions of the packages according to your needs, right? And then you can keep track of all the versions and the specific versions that were needed at the moment when you run the package, the code. Yeah? This is especially good for reproducibility. So imagine that you create your package, right? And you use a specific version of another package. Yeah. And later on, when you move to another machine, you discover that on that machine, you have a different version of the dependencies or the other modules that are needed in your code. Then for reproducibility, this could create some issues, right? Especially, I can only imagine this at this point. For instance, if some package needs specific random seeds or they use some default precision for the calculations, right? And this can create conflicts, right? Or reproducibility conflicts. In order to avoid this, you can create an environment and then you can make sure that you keep track of the specific versions of each of the packages that are used in your code. Yeah? So this is a good practice. And the good point in Julia, right, is that you don't need to create external environments to get all the packages that you need in your Julia code. In Python, one can see that there are several types of environments, right? For instance, one can consider the PyM, right, environment. Also, one can use some Conda environment to install the packages. The PIP and virtual M, yes. And at some point, it becomes a bit confusing, right? Because if you start some Conda environment, but later on you also use a PIP, so then you lose the track of the versions of the packages that are being installed, and it becomes a entangle from my side, from my perspective. But in Julia, and if you are only writing in Julia, Yes, then the packages in Julia are handled by Julia itself, and this avoids the conflicts of using different types of environments. So this is important for this part. If you go to the Julia documentation for environments, you will see that Julia distinguishes between project environments and package directories. And I will mention these two options in the following lines. So, in order to distinguish the different types of the different versions of the packages, yes, that are installed in your environments, either project direct environment or package directory, Julia uses the TOML files, yes, uh, where all the information of the packages that are installed are written. Yeah. So here in these files, you will see the information of the versions of the packages and also the identifiers. So this information can help you to reproduce your environment if you move to a different machine, for instance. So the packages can be imported or loaded. So there is a difference here. So you can do importing with the import command or load the package by using the word using. Yeah. So there is a difference between them, and it was mentioned previously that for some tasks, Julia takes a relatively long time, right? So, and this is the case when you use import or you use using. So in the case of import, you are importing only some specific functions, and this could reduce the overhead or of loading big packages. And in the case of a module, because you're importing all the functions that are included in the package, then this can consume more time, right? Depending on the size of the package, this can create some overhead. So because in the case of the importing, you are only importing some modules and not the namespace, you still need to add the module, yes, the module, and then the name of the function that you want to use. And in the case of using, because you are using the entire namespace, then this name becomes simply the name of the function. So when you start Julia, as you have done previously with Bjorn, so Julia creates a folder in your home directory. Yes. If you are curious, you can go to your home directory and take a look at this folder. And this is where Julia will store the environments and will also store the packages and more information, for instance, the source code or the binaries if you want to install some packages. So you can take a look with the tree command if you have installed it, or in Linux there is an alternative by using just find and these lines. Yeah? So here you can take a look at the .julia folder. So in order to recognize what version of the package is being used, Julia employs the so-called UUIDs, which are the unique in the identifiers of the packages. And these values function like the personal number or identification number for the persons, right? And they can they allow Julia to recognize what package it is and also the version of the package. So by default, Julia considers some default environments. And you can see that if you, for instance, load Julia, I will load it. Let me see if I haven't done it. No. Oh, no, this one. I will load the version 1.8.5 that is available on Kebnekaise. And then I will start this command, Julia. And here I write the load path. And you can see that by default, these environments are considered at is the current environment. This symbol here refers to the default Julia version environment. And this one refers to the standard library. The standard library is the base library that I mentioned before, which includes the basic functions like printing and doing some specific tasks in Julia that are very basic. So, but at other centers, there could be some additional environments. And in the case of UPPMAX, is besides these three environments, they put an additional environment, right? And here they have this additional environment because they recognize that some packages are very common and you don't need to install them by yourself, but instead you can just load this environment and then you will get the installed packages on some on this place, right? This location. So, but also for reproducibility, remember that if you are loading this environment or any other environment, then the versions of the package that you will be using are referring to this one. Yeah. Uh, so, well, if we have a fresh Vue installation, yes, uh, we can start using the package manager, which is called PKJ. And then we can see the status of the project with this command here. So in this case, I get nothing here for most of the entries and also the location of the TOML file for this Julia version. So this project directory was empty because it was a fresh Julia installation. But now that I have installed something, I could see the difference because I have added some packages there. So the TOML file for this project, which is the default environment, can be found here, as you can see. Yes, it's in my home directory, and then in one of the subdirectories is the TOML file. So now imagine that I want to install some package. I can do it in several ways. I can do it by using the Julian mode that was mentioned by Bjorn. And in this case, I just type pkj. After loading the pkj package manager, I can do pkj add and the name of the package that I want to install. Yeah. In this case, it is just a program for running computational chemistry calculations. And you can try another one if you want. And here I can try this. Yes, and it shouldn't take a long time because I pre-installed that, right? Or I did it previously. But if it is the first time that you install a package, then it can take a longer time. And this is one way to install the programs by using pkj add and then dftk or the name of your program. Interesting, it's taking some time to do it. And I think I know why it is taking time, although I installed that previously, and it's because I didn't load a module for CUDA, and because of that, Julie is trying to download some artifacts for CUDA. Yes. So if I loaded the CUDA environment, it would recognize that it was there. Okay. So now this is one way to add the package. Another way is by going to the package mode. Here I am in the Julia mode. You can go to the package mode by typing the bracket, the right bracket. And here, instead of using a pkj.add, you can simply type add and then the fpk, and it will try to add the package. Yeah. This is another way to install it. So now it shouldn't install anything because it has done it already. Now you can see it. And when you type you return to the Julian mode, you can type pkj.project, and you will see that there is a version of DFTK that was installed. And in addition to this, yes, let me see. No, this was the only one that was added. Okay. So yes, this is the way to install the packages. In Julia, you can do it in both ways. Yeah. And now I will go to the environments. The first environment that I mentioned already is called the project environment. So I will exit this session. Yeah. And then here you can type the following, yes, and follow what I do. So this is the project environment that I will discuss first. So then you can type mkdir, my first m, and you can see that it exists. Yes, I already did it. Then notice here that I am doing this on the command line, right? But I can also start Julia. And as Bjorn mentioned, you can go directly here on the shell by typing semicolon. And then here you can type mkdir, my first M, and you see that it exists. So then I can go to my first M, and you see that I move to this one. Yes, this environment. Then I can change the Julian mode and start the package manager. Then I go to, let me see, I can go to the package manager, this one, right? And then uh, type activate and a dot. And this word here, activate, will instruct Julia to create an environment in this folder, my first env. So then I can type this one. And you see that an environment was activated because here you can see that the environment now is my first M. And the name is taken from the folder's name. So then, let me see. I will go to the shell, and you see that there are some files that I already have. Yeah, and in the Julian mode, you can still see the environments that are recognized by Julia. So now notice that I am using an environment. I am inside an environment. Yeah, but still these default environments are recognized in the the isolated environment. In particular, this one is the current environment. This one is for the version, and this is the standard library. So besides these three, I don't have any other environment. So now we can try to add a package, yes, uh, in this environment. Then notice here that I am in the environment. I can add a package called, in this case, dftk. It's the same that I installed, but in the global environment where I was previously. And now I am in an isolated environment that I created. Notice that I don't create any environment as I did here, and I install dftk as previously without any environment, then dftk will be seen in a global environment. Yeah. But in this case, I want to include this package in the local environment, which is this isolated environment. So notice that Julia is resolving for some conflicts, right? Because I already installed the package, yes, and it's trying to update the registers, right? So basically it's doing, no, it's installing the, interesting. Well, Julia is installing this package now in my isolated environment, which is here. Yeah. So I didn't expect a completely new installation, as it is mentioned here, but I expected just that the information, yes, that is contained in this project UML and manifest UML files would be updated. But in this case, Julia is trying a new installation, and in my opinion, this is because this environment was old, right? And I install again a DFTK in the global environment, and this one wasn't updated for some time. That's why Julia is downloading the modules. Yes. But if you start with a fresh installation of Julia, you shouldn't see this situation because Julia will only update the registers. Okay, now we can see the files, and you can see these two files, manifest TUML and project TUML, that contain the information of the Julia version. Let me see if I can take a look at this one. And this number is the UUID that I mentioned previously. Yeah, it's an identifier of the package. So something additional, in case you try these commands, the Linux command on Windows, then you could see some problems because not all the Windows installations for Julia are aware of a Linux, yes, that you maybe have installed. Some shells, like a PowerShell, can include a Linux part, right? But if you are using another thing or another terminal, most likely you will need to link that to the Linux, and you won't be able to see this unless you set properly the path to the Linux installation. But if you're running Linux as I am doing here on Kebnekaise, then you should get these commands for Linux. So in the we can see these projects, the TUML files, right? And this project TUML only contains the UUID for the package, but a more specific file is the manifest.tuml, which contains more information. Yeah, and this one can help you to reproduce environment. So how can you activate an environment? Just imagine that you exit this session, yes, and then you want to activate the environments once you get into the folder. So then you can go to the folder, right, to the folder name here, where you created the environment, and you can see the manifest and the project TML file. And then you can start the Julia session. And here you can use, you can do that in several ways. You can start in the PKJ mode and run activate. No. Here, activate and dot. I need to add a dot here. Yes. Or you can start Julia, then using the PKJ. and then here with the pkg.activate and a dot, which means the current directory. And then you can see that the environment is activated, as you can see here. Another way to do that is by going to the terminal, yes, and then start Julia with a pre-existing environment. And this is done with a dash dash project and a dot, which means start Julia and activate the environment that is contained in this folder. So then if you go to the package mode, you can see that the environment was activated when I launch Julia. Okay, so the next way to create an environment is by doing the package environment. Yeah. And this is similar to the previous environment that I mentioned here, the project environment. But here, this package environment is more suitable if you want to develop some code, right? So the package environment provides you with a more structured way to create your source code, right? And also to create an structured file directory, yes, for your package. How does it work? You go to the package manager and type generate and the name of the package. So here there is an issue that you cannot use the dash as I mentioned previously because Julia won't recognize the dashes. So that's why I wrote my first package like this together. And then you will see that it generates this folder. Yeah. And here inside the folder, you can get the TML file and also some tree directory where, for instance, you can have your source code. So by default, Julia creates an initial file where you can place the initial code for Julia, and this is a default name, yes? And you can change it later on. Then how you can activate the environment? So you move to the folder and then run the activate dot, and it will activate the environment here. So then you can check the status and start adding your code as I am doing here. I am adding Flux, which is a machine learning package in Julia. So as I mentioned, this one, the package environment is more in the sense that you want to create a package with some source code, yes, and a tree directory. And in this other case, is more in the direction, for instance, if you have only some files, right, that you want to keep in some place and also where you want to use some specific version of the software. So about working with environments can be flexible, right? And we have seen that Julia by default loads three environments, and in some centers it can load more environments. And this creates a concepts of stack environments, right? Where several environments can be included in your Julia session. So this can be done, but this is more advanced And if you don't need that, you shouldn't change this one, yes, because this will alter the default way of using Julia. So if you are happy with the default environments, you don't have to touch this. So this is just so that you understand what Julia can do. Yes. And in particular here, you can use the environment variable Julia load path to add more paths. Yes. For instance, if I use this variable on the terminal here, and I start Julia, then I can see here that I only get this prompt, right? Which refers to the current environment. So I am not loaded any other environment. For instance, if I type load path, then you can see that this variable is not recognized, right? Because this is not we are not including the standard library that I used previously, and in this way we are modifying the way in which Julia loads the environment. That's why I mentioned this is more advanced, and this is if you want to have an exact control of the packages that you want to install, even if even in the case of the standard library. So how to add more paths? You can use the push command in Julia, or if you want to empty this load path, then you can use empty. Yeah. So for instance, let me see. Yeah,
Maybe we need a break soon.
yeah, and yes, yes. And here I will cover briefly this environment stacks. And this is related to how the paths are included in Julia. Yes, you can do this with the empty or the push command. And in this way, you can get different environments, right? That can be used in your program. For instance, in the case of UPPMAX, there is an environment, right, that can be added or activated in this way, and also a different path or environment in this location. So UPPMAX offers pre-installed packages, yes, in an existing environment, and they include common packages that are installed frequently, right? So you don't need to install them if you load the environment. And the difference with the other centers, like HPC2N, LUNARC, and PDC, is that we offer only the standard library. Yeah. So here there are some exercises that you can try, and you can let us know if you have any questions.